So welcome to Ray's Recovery. Today I want to talk about why do people get or become addicted to drugs, and what do you do if you think you are or if you know you are. So this can be a little bit of a complicated question. I personally believe the reason that people become addicted to drugs, there may be a few different reasons. Maybe they had a surgery or an accident and they got put on a pain medication, for example, and it turned into a full-blown heroin addiction. That is a very common story. The other very common story is at some point in an individual's life, they suffered some kind of trauma or pain and did not know how to process that, really to no fault of their own, and found drugs. And when they felt the relief or the perceived relief that the drugs gave them or give you, that caused an opening of, wow, this is how I can cope with this. I know for me, it was like I had a traumatic incident and I did not know how to handle those emotions. I was very young. I wasn't even in my teens yet. And when I first experienced that illusion of relief that drugs gave me, I thought I had arrived. I thought, wow, this is it. And I didn't know any better at that age. I didn't. And some people do know better, but still go down that rabbit hole anyway. But I truly believe that there is a root to the addiction, the addictive tendencies, the compulsion. Like in my example, when I was 12, my parents split and it confused me so much and I was so angry, and there was a lot of other factors involved there, right? But there was a root there. And even before that, there was an incident, and maybe this will help you to figure out or think about maybe what your root is, or when that point was in your life that was kind of the catalyst that drove this addiction forward. And another thing I just want to clear up on in the process of explaining this is people say addiction is a disease, and some people disagree with that. So if you look at the definition of disease, it literally means to be away from or without ease in your life. And so if we look at the actual definition of disease and define it that way, then of course, yes, it is. It's something that affects you mentally, physically, and spiritually. Okay. Now, it might be a self-imposed disease, but so is cigarette smoking that leads to lung cancer. And I know there's a lot of controversy and a lot of mixed beliefs and thoughts and feelings on that topic. It's a very interesting thing to me that something that is defined, a word like disease, that causes physical, spiritual, and intellectual or mental harm, to be disregarded as not a disease. Well, you had the choice as the most common, thing I see, or argument that I see people using. Well, you chose to do that, and maybe very so. Yes, we put something in us. I'd say most people aren't forced to do that. Some are, but at any rate, it means without or away. Dis means without or away from, and ease, without or away from ease, so this dis-ease, this detachment away from ease. So that's where that root comes from. It's from the old French word dessace, and it means lack, want, distress, trouble, misfortune. Okay, so this is where it comes from. And so when I say addiction is a disease, I literally mean it's a disease. I'm not trying to compare it with a cancer patient, even though I can compare disease as cancer, disease as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, so on and so on and so on. So this is something that's going on inside of a person, in the brain, and does become a spiritual and physical problem as well. So for me, back to my point, I might have been, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 8 years old. And there was one nice summer afternoon where I believe it was a weekend, and my room was a mess. My closet was a mess. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of little toys, and they were just completely in disarray. And so my dad went outside to do some yard work. My mom comes to me and says, "Hey, you can't come outside with us. You have to stay in here and clean your closet and organize it. And when we come back in from doing yard work, we want to see it clean, neat, and organized." And so the little kid me, I just remember kneeling down in front of my closet with the closet door open and being so overwhelmed. I didn't even know how to start to organize all my toys. And I was so scared that I was going to get spanked, punished, that I started to hyperventilate. I was crying. That was my first panic attack I ever had. And of course, at that age, I had no idea what was going on. And my mom comes back in, and she's like, "What's wrong, honey?" And I told her, I don't know what to do here, and I don't know how to start to organize this, and I'm so scared, and I'm going to get in trouble. And she felt so bad. But so my life progressed. I moved on from that moment, and it wasn't until many years later, when someone told me there is a root to your pain. There is a point in your life where something had happened, and I always thought, okay, well, that was my parents splitting and ultimately getting divorced. And yes, that was a major turning point. But before that, that seemingly unimportant moment from my childhood, it switched something in my brain. And so whenever I was faced with situations that I did not know what to do, I didn't seem to have the answer or solution, I would have these panic attacks. And I guess that was my system uh, in my body that just responded in that way, as a way of kind of backing up from it, shutting down, not being responsible. And so that played out in many areas of my life. Every time I was faced with a situation of opposition where I didn't have the solution, I had no idea what to do, didn't have the answer. It was the flight mechanism, fight or flight. So, and that manifested itself or presented itself in the form of extreme panic attacks for years, decade plus, I'd say. And that led into a whole other thing. I mean, I think I was 12 years old when, maybe 14 actually, somewhere in there, when they put me on Xanax for panic disorder. And I didn't even know what the stuff was. And I had a friend that I would smoke weed with, and he knew what it was. And he says, "Oh, that's good stuff." And then so that led into me abusing that. I didn't know what it was. I'm like, okay, the doctor just gave this thing to me to take when I'm starting to feel these panic attacks come on, and I didn't even really know what a panic attack was. And so I tell this to people all the time: you can't punish the pain out of someone. So someone's out there making a mess of their life, getting high, doing whatever they can to get the next one because their brain believes that they need it just as badly as oxygen to survive. Your brain is literally hijacked by a substance or a chemical. And so then they throw them in jail, for example. Punishment. Well, this ought to set you straight. We see how well that's worked in at least the United States, right? Or in the whole world. It has not been an effective way of dealing with this problem. So until we face the root and even start to accept the fact that there is a root and want to start to approach that, because, in my situation, that's the last thing I want to do, is approach the situation that I had no idea how to handle, because, well, what am I going to do once I'm face to face with it? Freak out and have a panic attack, right? So it didn't make sense to even want to look at the root cause, nor did I realize that there was a root cause. I always thought if I could just put the drugs down, The drugs are the problem. If I could just, for the life of me, put down the drugs, then everything would magically be better in my life because I wouldn't be having to do these things I'm doing for money to get more drugs. I wouldn't have to be dealing with the people I dealt with for the drugs and drug dealers and associates. I wouldn't have people mad at me. I wouldn't be nodding out in important settings or groups or in front of my parents. I wouldn't be coming home drunk and puking all over my bed and the floor. As a child, and yada, 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 so forth and so on. And so I had to be really, really brought to my knees by an unfathomable amount of pain and human suffering that I just literally could not go on anymore with it. And there was actually a point in my 20s now where I had really just reached the end of my rope. There were so many things that happened up until that point that I thought I had hit rock bottom and reached the end of my rope. And addiction is a progressive disease. It gets worse over time. It does not get better. The curve is downward. From the point where you start, you've taken the first drug, and if you choose to take it again and again, until it becomes a thing where your choice is gone, you don't even want to do this thing anymore, but you're doing it. It is a downward as the months, days, weeks, months, years, and decades, if you're fortunate to live that long through addiction, as those time periods go on, it progressively gets worse. And so when we have a period of sobriety and things start to get better, and then we relapse, well, you take the elevator straight down to the basement again. You don't start all over from where you were when you first started using. And some of us, we understand that it is a progressive disease. Again, away from ease, not having serenity in your life, physical, spiritual, mental wellness. It's trouble, lack, misfortune, away from ease. And so what do you do? That's the question. So for me, back to in my 20s, right? I had a week that was one of the worst weeks of my life. At least I thought at that point it was. And I had a girlfriend who was pretty crazy, to be honest, but I wasn't really in my right mind either. So, it kind of lined up. It was someone willing to be with me in my state that I was in. And I had a job in the engineering field. I had a pretty nice little sports car that I really loved. Slept in one morning, didn't hear the alarm. As soon as I opened my eyes, I noticed I'm already like a half hour late for work, right? And maybe even an hour and a half. I can't recall, but I was considerably late. And so I hurried up and called the boss, and they say, you know what? Don't even bother coming in. You're fired, And so I was driving my car later that morning, because I believe I was actually going into work anyway to try and convince them that, to keep me. And the engine blew up in my car. And like, I'm pretty broke, because I'm just living stamp bag to stamp bag, really. And even though I had a decent job in the engineering field, the more you make, the more you spend. So I tell my girlfriend, and she's just like, you know what? You're just such a low life. I don't want anything to do with you. Get out of my apartment. And she broke up with me, and now I'm homeless. My car blew up, and I lost my job all on the same day. And I just hit such a low. I just felt like I was done with life. Like, there's no way this can get better. I'm homeless now. Like, my car blew up. Like, everything just collapsed in one day. I mean, maybe if it was just one of those things, I could have dealt with it, or maybe even two of those things. But for all of those things to happen in within a few hour period, not even 24 hours, it wasn't even a full day that all this transpired. It might've been 4 or 5 hours. And, I borrowed a car from somebody. I got all the money I could get together, about if I recall, about $235. I called my dope dealer, went and got all the dope, all the heroin I could get with that amount of money. Went to a parking lot in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a well-known parking lot in a very populated city, and parked the borrowed car and began to mix all this heroin together and suck it up in a needle. And I didn't bother cleaning up all the stamp bags and stuff because I mean, this was it. I was done. And so I was going to kill myself. That was the goal, was to commit suicide, because I was just in a living nightmare. And I could not think or fathom even any reason at all to continue to live. It just didn't make sense to be alive anymore. And I was truly convinced that this was the only solution for me, because I just couldn't deal. I could not cope. I couldn't stand it anymore. And it was like I couldn't escape. Okay, so I proceed to inject over $200 worth of heroin in my veins. And I went out. This was probably, I don't know, late afternoon, early evening, 5, 6 o'clock, 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. And the next thing I know, I wake up in the van that I was in, and the needles sitting there, all these empty stamp bags, and I'm like trying to get my bearings and understand, and I'm like, holy crap, I just woke up, and I grabbed my phone. It was like 4 a.m., maybe a little after 4 in the morning, and I had like 20 missed calls from that now ex-girlfriend, and all these voicemails of her screaming and you know, all kinds of stuff, and text messages, and I'm just like, my first thought though, when I opened my eyes, was like some swear words, like damn it, I'm still alive. I had no sense of gratitude for surviving that. I didn't think that maybe there was a power or force or God, you know, something greater than me that was keeping me alive for some purpose. I had none of that in my conscious awareness whatsoever. All I knew when I came to is that I was alive, and I was really mad, and I felt so trapped. In that moment, I said, this is hell. I remember saying out loud to myself, this is hell. And I cannot escape it. I suck so bad at life that I cannot even take myself out. I can't even successfully kill myself. I mean, I had just lost my job. Engine blew up in my car. Now I don't have a ride. Girlfriend broke up with me. Now I don't have a girlfriend. Kicks me out. Now I don't have a place to live. And then I try to kill myself, the fifth element of the day. And I failed at that too. And it was just such a low for me. I can't even, it's ineffable. There are no words in language to describe how I felt. It was just such a low, and I felt trapped. And I really said, like, this is hell. And I think I started to laugh, because it's like, well, it can't get any worse. You know, there is no escaping this. I just want out of this situation so bad, because I don't know what to do with it, that I was willing to take my own life. And that didn't even work. Why? I can't tell you why. I mean, I definitely overdosed, and there was no one around. No one seemed to see me. It was almost like I was invisible. And I mean, police would patrol this parking lot, because like I said earlier, it was a well-known parking lot in Pittsburgh where heroin addicts would go and shoot up every day. This was a well-known area. And I didn't care about that. You know, it didn't matter to me. I was going out. I don't care what happens or who sees me. It doesn't matter anymore. And that was my thought process, which makes sense if you're going to kill yourself. Well, it doesn't really matter, right? So yeah, I just remember driving back and just like, I just was numb. I just was numb. I didn't know what to do, think, or feel. And my addiction got even stronger, because now I need to numb all this even more. And it got to the point I was injecting other things. Well, it was already at that point, but I started going harder and more with injecting other things that should not be injected, and but have a great effect when you do inject them, but you shouldn't take certain things that way. And I was. And so my liver shuts down on me. I was so sick, and it's like I didn't know why. It was like, why am I so sick? And I thought it was heroin withdrawal. And I'm like, well, I just did some heroin. Maybe I'll do some more and I'll feel better. So I do more heroin, and I'd feel sicker. And I'm like, why? Why is this I take a bite of a cracker, I'd puke it right up. I take a sip of water, I puke it right up. I couldn't hold any food or any water down. I had a friend that was sober and clean, someone who's not in drugs, but knew me and liked me. We were friends since the sixth grade, and this person came over. I was actually staying at my dad's. He was letting me stay there, and um, she said, "You've got to go to the hospital." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. I can't do that. They're gonna throw me in rehab, and I can't afford to do that. And they're gonna basically take me away from all my drugs, and I'm just not. I'm gonna get in trouble. They're gonna drug test me. They're gonna put me in jail." I just was so panicked, and she pretty much dragged me there. And I said, "Okay, wait. Before we go, I have to consume all the drugs I have, because this might be my last chance to get high. They might throw me in a rehab or something." I didn't know. And so I proceeded to take multiple ecstasy tablets, shot multiple bags of heroin, multiple pills, different kinds, opiates, tranquilizers, yada, yada. And by the time I got to the hospital and they called me into triage for my intake, I mean, I was so gone, that I was in an alternate reality living. I was working. I was climbing a ladder, shingling a roof. When they called me back to triage, and it's not funny. I mean, I'm glad I can kind of chuckle about it now, looking back at it, but it really isn't funny at all. But I can make light of it, it was my life. And so I can laugh at myself. And I think that's a good thing to do, at least for where I'm at, to a degree. Like, yeah, that was stupid, Ray. And so they called me back, and I said, hold on a second. And I remember going like this, because I thought I was on a ladder shingling a roof. And I had an 80-pound bundle of shingles on my shoulder, and I had a cigarette. And I remember going like that to set it down on the roof. And I said, "Hey, Nick, hold my cigarette." And I'm like reaching down to hand him my cigarette. This Nick, which was a real friend of mine who I thought was there, was not there. And I'm backing down this ladder, which I'm really just standing on flat ground in the middle of the hospital. And they're just looking at me in like complete horror with their I'll never forget, their jaws were like just wide open on the floor, and they were like, "What are you on?" And I was like, "Oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's all good. I'm fine," and they're just like, "Whoa, man, we're gonna put you in a room for 12 hours and let you sober up." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great, cool. You got TV and something to do in there, and I just need something to occupy me." And they put me in a room with TV, and I was just as happy as could be, and high as a kite. And then the reality of life smacked me in the face after I sobered up, and they put me in the hospital. They transferred me to another hospital, and my urine looked like coffee. Yeah, like coffee. And I couldn't urinate. I had to have a catheter in me. And then, so I'm so sick from my liver, because nothing's being filtered, right? And so I'm so sick. And then the withdrawal comes, and now I'm even sicker. And I mean, I was so sick. I mean, tears were just streaming from my face. I was in so much agony. I was begging the nurses to please do something to help me. And they were like, "Well, we can't give you any drugs." I'm like, "Please, like some kind of tranquilizer, something, please." And "No, we can't." And I said, "Okay, what about euthanasia?" I was like, "Can you legally kill me if I sign my life over?" And I was dead serious. Like, if I would have had a gun, I would have shot myself in the head. I was in so much agony and suffering, by my own making too, by my own hand. That's the crazy part. So they said no, that like this is not a euthanasia situation. And I said, "Okay, well, you have to give me something." And so they finally gave me like 2 milligrams of Ativan and into my IV, right? Because I was so dehydrated. They had an IV in me, and it took the like just a little bit of an edge off for maybe 20 minutes, and it was right back to full blown withdrawal. And they can only give you so much of that stuff. And I had a tolerance to benzodiazepines, as it was a very high tolerance actually. So 2 milligrams of Ativan really didn't. It was like drinking a glass of water. It's about the effects I had from it, where some people would knock them out for a couple of days. To me, it was like almost nothing, And so I remember having a friend, I had like $65. That was it to my name. And I called a friend and said, man, can you please help me and get me some dope and bring it back to the hospital? Oh, sure. And he came and he got my money. Never seen him again. Never came back. And I was just so desperate. That I was even willing to do that and risk, being handcuffed to the hospital bed for getting caught with heroin. I just didn't care. I was so sick that I would have done whatever I had to do to relieve that. And the doctor comes in and says, don't you know that, using needles is bad for you? And I just was so upset. I'm like, man, don't patronize me. I said, yeah, of course I know it's bad for me. And he's like, well, didn't anyone ever tell you that? I'm like, and he's like, and I said, well, look, instead of this conversation, tell me what is going on with my physical condition. How about let's go there instead, because I don't want to entertain the other conversation. And so he said, well, you have a hepatitis of the liver. That doesn't mean you have hepatitis A, B, or C. It just means that your liver's sick, and that's what we call it. And if you change your lifestyle, your liver should revert back to a healthy condition, because your liver is very resilient. And yeah, there's nothing really to do for you, but just we're going to keep you in here for a few days and monitor you. And then you need to just quit using drugs. And I'm like, okay. So I got out and I'm like, well, I can't quit using drugs. I'm still dope sick. I'm still in the grips. Maybe I just don't inject stuff. And that lasted maybe for like 4 or 5 days, where I was sniffing instead of injecting. And, well, it just went right back to it. And eventually I went to another rehab, like a 28, 30-day rehab, got out, did great in the rehab, starting to feel somewhat human almost, and got out, and within an hour from getting home, I was high again. An hour, 2 hours, I was high again. And I repeated this cycle over and over and over again, until eventually, I was like homeless again, and just a reckless life. So what to do, right? Well, one thing I had to learn the hard way: I could not do it alone. No matter how bad I wanted to, no matter how I tried to manage it, it was all in vain. And, people don't like to hear the answer to this, especially when they are the addict and well, I've got kids, I've got family, I've got a job, I've got a house, I've got bills, I can't go to a rehab. And it's like, well, here's the solution that does work, if you want it to. Anything that you put before your recovery, you're going to lose eventually anyway. Okay, that's a fact. You can take that to the bank. If you keep going this route, you're going to lose all that stuff anyway. It's not going to matter. You're going to lose your kids. You're going to lose your house. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your car. You're going to lose your significant other, your husband, your wife, your family. You're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your soul. You're going to lose yourself ultimately. Okay, so cut it now, count your losses if that's how you choose to look at it, which is actually a big gain. But if you lose a job and stuff, so what, man? Your life. What about your life? Like job, you can get another job. You can get another car. You can get another house. You can get another girlfriend or boyfriend. You can get your kids back if you start to do the right things. You can salvage a marriage if you start to do the right things. And I'm not saying that's a universal that you definitely will, but it's possible. I've seen plenty of people do it, but you have to reach out for help. You cannot do this alone. I cannot say that directly and clearly enough. You cannot do it alone. I don't care who you are, how strong you think you are, how big your muscles are, how tough you think you are. You cannot do it alone. You need help and support. We weren't even designed to be here and go through this life alone. Why do you think the man and woman relationship was set up? It was because when God created us, he saw that man was going to need a companion. Okay. And so we were designed to be with others in community and to lean on each other for support. So this isn't any different. Actually, it's more vital in addiction than a lot of things in life. So you've got to reach out. You've got to humble yourself. But for me, in order to get to that point, this is my story. It doesn't have to be yours. It might be yours, but it doesn't need to be. I had to get to the point where I had so much pain. It was such an inhuman amount of pain that I literally just could not live anymore. I couldn't take myself out. I didn't know how to deal with it. I tried putting drugs down. My health was on the line. I was dying. It was a slow suicide. And anyone that's been an addict or knows an addict for a period of time, it's a slow self-imposed suicide. And pretty soon you're literally praying and begging for death. I was praying to God to take my life, literally incessantly praying, God, please take my life. And I was wholeheartedly meaning it. Okay. I did not want to live anymore, but I couldn't seem to escape, overdose, try to take myself out, overdose. I could go into so many things. I just could not seem to escape it. And I didn't understand why. Why do I have to suffer like this? Why me? And so the solution was I had to reach out for help. I had to humble myself. And then I had to trust the people in those institutions, which was extremely hard. I had to trust that they had my best interests in mind. When my best thinking got me in that place, normal people don't end up in a rehab or a detox. Okay. Let me give you a news flash. That's not something that the average normal human being does. Okay. You shouldn't end up there, but I did. And it was for my own good. And so I had to slowly begin to trust that these people, what they're saying and what they're telling me to do was going to be better than what I could think of to do myself. And so when they told me you need 3C long-term rehab, did I want to do that? Absolutely not. But I didn't, my back was against the wall. I was like, what else am I supposed to do? I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to live. So, okay, worst case scenario, I can always walk out of here, right? So I'm here. I could always leave. I could always break the rules and leave, AMA, against medical advice. And so I stayed and I completed. And they said, well, you're going to have to go to a halfway house. We highly suggest that. And it's like, where else was I going to go? The streets and start all over again. And after I just got 3 months clean, and I said, well, I don't want to. Especially it was out in the middle of nowhere in like a big cornfield, away from everything. And I was like, man, I don't want to go there. I'm going to have to share rooms with other people I don't know and all this stuff. And, you're thinking of all the reasons why it's going to be bad and how it's not going to work and why you're not going to like it. And so I just said, well, I think it was February. And it's cold. And I said, well, I'll go. Worst case scenario, if I don't like it, I can always leave. And they're like, yep, you sure can. So I went and I listened to them. And then so while I was there, this halfway house was considered extreme behavioral modification therapy. And none of those words were a stretch of the truth. It was very extreme. They pretty much broke me down to nothing. Everything I thought and believed was questioned and it was challenged, and I had to challenge myself, and I had to start to believe that what they were saying was true, because I didn't believe the things they were telling me was true. It was quite the opposite, but my best thinking got me in that situation. So slowly but surely, and not to mention, a little bit after I got into that halfway house, my dad had died, and a family member called the halfway house to tell them that my dad was dying, for me to come and say my last goodbyes to him. And they didn't tell me. And I had 3 months clean. I didn't know how to process that. And so 2 weeks pass and I decide to call the attorney to see if there's anything I had to do or anything that concerned me and the things I had to sign. I didn't know what the heck to do in that situation. And so he said, well, your brother was power of attorney, but the paperwork got sent back since he's dead. And I said, what? And he says, oh, you didn't know your brother passed away 2 weeks after your dad. And I just like hung up the phone and I just sunk, like I slid down the wall and just sat there in the fetal position. And I, I didn't know. I just didn't know. And that would have been the perfect excuse for me to leave and go get high. If there was ever an excuse somebody needed, well, I just lost 2 people in my direct family and didn't even know about it, wasn't even told. That right there is a great reason to a drug addict to go get high. But I saw it as an opportunity. Well, the last time I saw my dad, I was clean. They took me when I was in rehab to see him and visit him for 30 minutes. He was in a nursing home. He wasn't doing well. And I kind of knew that was the last time I'd ever see him. And I just cried the whole way home, but the whole way back to rehab home. So I said, well, the last time he saw me, I was clean. Now I can use this as an opportunity to be kind of carry his legacy on of all the good that he had in him and all the good things he tried to instill in me. And the last time he saw me, I was clean. And I want that to be how it stays. Why go back? Why go back now? Let his death be a reason to stay clean and do good, to honor him, and that was the best I had. And that's pretty good, that was the best thoughts I had at that time. And it was enough, and people in the halfway house couldn't believe that I was actually going to stay. They were like, man, I'd be out of here if I were you. And so it actually strengthened the men around me to see my actions and how I handled things, still not even knowing what I was, who I was, how to deal with emotions, what emotions really were, all that stuff. And so that's the how. I mean, it's not going to be easy. You didn't get into this situation in a day or a week. It took some time to get into the depths of addiction, right? And it's something that maybe we've been doing for months, years, decades. And so I personally spent about 2 years, because after I went to the 3-quarter house for 6 months, the maximum stay, I went to the halfway house for 6 months. Then I went to a 3-quarter house for a year. And so I had about 2 years in a treatment environment where I needed that. I mean, after about 17 years roughly of drug addiction and abuse, it was told to me this way, which is just such a beautiful illustration. If you walk 14 miles into the woods and you want to get back to the road that you started, well, you've got to turn around and walk 14 miles back, right? That makes sense. So addiction is very similar. When we take this path of addiction through our life for however long and however far we go with it, well, we're not just going to do 28 days in a rehab and be back to like a great life where people trust us and everything's magically restored and you feel good and you know how to survive and live and you know how to control your emotions. And no, man, it doesn't work that way. And you have to realize this. Things are going to be given to us as we can handle them. The level of responsibility I had was non-existent. So I had to start to learn what responsibility was and then how I became responsible and how do I deal with all these emotions that I used to hate. And what are they and what coping tools and mechanisms can I use and how can I change my perspective and challenge my thoughts? And there's this whole process of recovery and I had to really do the hard work and be honest and work on myself. And it was not easy. The first year of my last time getting clean was the worst year of my life, probably, despite everything else that had happened. That last year was the worst one. And so I just stuck it out. I just had support and I stayed tight with my support circle. I kept going to NA meetings. That was my thing. NA, I went for years. Had a home group. I did everything they told me. I gave people hugs. I held the door open. I set up the chairs. I made the coffee. I brought the snacks. I did all the stuff that didn't make sense. I didn't understand. I just did it because, well, they're doing it and they seem to be pretty happy, and they look clean, and a lot of them were actually legitimately clean and legitimately happy for years. And so I'm like, well, I don't got any other better ideas. My best thinking got me here in this place, in this seat in NA anyway. So, I mean, I might as well do what they're doing and see if it changes my life. And if not, well, my misery can be refunded in a heartbeat out on the corner. And so that choice is always going to be there to go back to using. Why don't I try something different? In a year's time, my life was so different that I need a telescope to look back to see where I was. I was not the same person anymore. Now, I wasn't who I needed to be yet, and I'm still not who I need to become. But I was so different, and my life was so much better that it just didn't make sense anymore to go back. And I'm like, man, why would I want to go through all that again? I went through this cold turkey withdrawal probably 200 times, trying to quit, quit for a couple of days, quit for a day, quit for a week maybe, and back to it, and it's just like, man, your body can only take so much. Your mind, your spirit, the people around you, they actually care about you. They can only take so much. And pretty soon you're just alone, and I was just alone, a monster. No one wanted to be around me. So it was a lot of silence for me. I had to just shut up and listen, and quit saying I was going to do things and instead just start doing them. The words hold no weight anymore. After so many years of lying and manipulating and saying you're going to change and I'm going to quit tomorrow and all this stuff, your words are worthless after so long. And if you've been in a position like this or are in a position like this, that's true. And I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but the truth is always going to set you free. So, okay, if my words are worthless, maybe I can make some actions that will be worth something. And that's what I did. And so I stayed tight with my circle. I went to meetings. I was honest. I opened up. Now, it's not just going to meetings and sitting there, I had to, after I listened for a while, I was at the point where I could start to talk. But at first I didn't know anything, so I didn't have anything really much to say. I did, but I didn't. Nothing that really would help anyone, I didn't think. And so I listened to other people, and then I started to kind of come around. Then I started to dump my garbage out. And there is a healing process in saying all the nasty things that you're feeling, experiencing, that you did, and getting all that out. That is part of the healing process. You see, addiction wants to keep us isolated and keep all that junk inside you, and don't tell them. They won't understand. You're alien. No one's going to understand you. You're the only one in the world with these feelings, and you're totally alienated. Just stay here, stay isolated. Or, well, you don't want to be around them because you're just going to hurt them anyway. And all the things that this disease, this sick way of thinking says to us in our minds, and we believe it, and it's a lie. It is a lie. I'm here to tell you today, it is 100% all a lie, including the thought that taking some drugs is somehow better than what you are without them. That is a major lie that has been slowly accepted, or maybe even quickly accepted after the first time for some, and has just become more and more and more ingrained and stronger and grew into your own personal truth, which turns out to be a global lie, a universal lie. It's just not true. And so kind of coming to the awareness, you'll start to, on your recovery journey, you will start to get a sense of self-awareness. And that self-awareness is huge and key. So, but you got to separate yourself from the substances somehow. And I know I couldn't do it on my own, so I had to go be locked up somewhere where they told me when to eat, when to sleep, put me on a schedule, get me in a structure and a routine, because I couldn't do that stuff on my own. And so this was what I had to do. And so if you want, you could, if you haven't lost it all yet, but you can't quit using drugs, and you really want to, you have a deep desire, why not go get some help? and before you lose it all. I mean, you don't have to take the route that I did and lose everything and be homeless. I mean, I started out with 2 garbage bags of clothes. And I was so grateful to have that, because there's a lot of people that didn't even have shoes, or they might have just had a hospital gown and or like a pair of shorts, and that's all they had, literally. And so I had 2 garbage bags of clothes. I mean, I was balling, with 2 garbage bags of clothes. The drug addict, the homeless drug addict, that's pretty good. And but you don't have to take it that far. I mean, I did, because I was an extremist and I just wanted to see how far I could take things sometimes. And that was stupid. And I saw how far I could take it. And thank God I came back, which brings me back to all those times when I thought, why am I suffering? Why do I have to go through this? Why is this happening to me? What good could ever possibly come out of this? Well, years later, years into recovery, I realized that was all just a training. And it was a training for me to be able to help other people through it now. So there is a complete flip side to all that negative. And as bad as that stuff was, as hopeless as it seemed, and as hopeless as I felt, as bad as I felt, as depressed as I was, as suicidal as I was, as psychotic as I was, after I had the self-awareness that, whoa, this was like some intense training to prepare me for a purpose and a mission in life that I am supposed to fulfill. And I truly believe that this is a divinely directed purpose that I am asked and commanded to fill. I truly believe that. Now, it's like, do I really want to put myself in the midst of this horrible problem that can be very scary, especially around certain people when you're high and stuff, man? We're scary people, we do some wacky, crazy things. And like, who in their right mind would really want to subject themselves to that? Well, you've got to be careful, but when it's a calling and it's undeniable, you just do it. Life's not always going to be full of roses and happiness. But you do it. You do it because it's something that you're called to do. I mean, I've been given visions, by God. I have been given very clear, very vivid visions of what I'm supposed to do. There is a purpose that I am here for, and there is a purpose that you are here for. And I didn't believe this. When I was at my worst and someone would say that to me, I just didn't believe it, okay? And you might not believe it either, and that's fine. I hope and pray that you will get through your struggle and come to a point where you can say, I remember watching that video and that guy was right. There was a purpose to this. I do have a purpose. And I never understood what that was for me, but it was right underneath my nose the whole time. I was living the opposite of the purpose. I was on the flip side of it. And once I started to accept and come to grips with it, come to terms like, this is what I'm supposed to do, then everything starts to make sense. And it's like, wow, man, now I have this immense gratitude. And I had immense gratitude after like my first year clean. My first 60 days clean, I had such an immense gratitude. Like, whoa, I'm still alive and I get another chance at this. Like, the gratitude, that immense, overjoyous gratitude lasted for years. And then, life does happen. They call it a pink cloud, whatever. I'm not really a pink cloud kind of believer. I mean, I just think we all go through phases in life. We all have highs and lows. You can call it a pink cloud. My pink cloud lasted 3 years then, you know what I mean? But I hate that term. I think it's stupid. And a bunch of the, traditional recovery people talk about this pink, oh, you're just on your pink cloud. Man, how about I'm just grateful and happy I'm freaking alive, dude? Like why do you got to put a label like on it? Like, we're all going to go through highs and lows. So are you in a dark, gloomy valley now? You know what I mean? Like it's just life. It's just the frequency of life. And we all have high. No high lasts forever. No low lasts forever. Okay. And so I had a 3-year period, man. I was just so grateful for life, and just, I could smell the air. I could feel the sun. None of that stuff. I couldn't experience any of that before. I was so numb. And so the joy that came in that, there was a lot of very scary things too, like feeling like a newborn baby in a 30-year-old man's body, and now you have people expect you to act like an adult and you feel like a little kid, you know? I mean, that was scary, but you just keep going, man. You just be honest. Just tell people how you feel that are going through it as well. I mean, there's like nothing more powerful than one addict helping another when you're going through this situation. Um, for your like sobriety, your process. I mean, just talking to another addict, someone who's been through it and gets it, because the average person, they don't get it, and that's okay. They don't need to get it for you to get better or for you to be happy. Your family members may never understand. That's okay. Your wife, your husband, your significant other, they may never get it. They may never understand. And you got to learn to be like, okay with that. Like there's, so what? Really? So, okay, they don't get it. Why do you feel the need to be like validated so bad and understood? I mean, yes, we all want to be understood, but you can only understand something truly when you go through it yourself. You can say you understand, you might have a good idea of it, but until you actually experience it for yourself in your first person perspective, you don't truly have a very deep knowing and understanding of it. And so accept that. That's okay. That's just how it is. And once you start to understand yourself, it doesn't matter if other people understand you. Of course, we all want love. At least I'd like to think everybody wants to be loved. I mean, that's a basic human need, in my opinion, is love. Some people might disagree with that, but I disagree with them. So, like, without love, what are you? You know, what? Seriously, like every good emotion stems from love. And in my opinion, there are two emotions, love and fear. And you can take any other emotional label and you can track it back to one of those two, love or fear. Okay. Anger, resentment, hate, depression, anxiety, all go to fear. Happy, joyous, free, serene, all point to love, you know? So those are your primary emotions. And when you can understand, when you start having the bad feelings, that there is something here rooted in fear, that self-awareness, okay, well, what am I afraid of? You can start to really grab a hold of your life and start to act differently and get different results. And it starts with the thinking. It really does. You're going to think something that's going to make you feel something that's going to move your body into action, because that feeling must be expressed. The only way it can be expressed is through your actions, through your body, through your language, and that is going to produce you a result. And if the result you are getting is not a result that you want, you've got to go to the root, which is your thinking. And if you have sick thinking or diseased thinking, however you want to word it, you've got to learn how to start to challenge your thoughts, challenge your beliefs, and change. You got to change that stuff. I mean, this isn't easy, but I always tell people, like, active addiction is not for the faint of heart. That is not an easy path, and neither is recovery. But you got through active addiction, and if you've survived that, you can definitely survive recovery, right? It's a good thing that it's not for the faint of heart, because active addiction is not for the faint of heart. It takes a very strong person and resilient person to survive years and decades of active addiction. And if you've gone through that, you know that's true. It takes some great strength to endure that. And if you're not a person who's been through that, that might sound really dumb to you, but that's the truth. I'm speaking from my own experience. And so we start to gain this greater awareness. We start to take an honest look at things and take full responsibility for where we're at in our lives. That is the path to freedom. I'm telling you. Why, man, it would be a really bad existence if it was really his fault or her fault that I did this or I did that, or, well, the government raised taxes, so that's why. Man, what a crappy existence if you had no control over your life and it was everything but you that was the cause of the results in your life. I mean, it is only you, you know, and once you start to take that kind of accountability and responsibility, now you're setting yourself up to be able to get results you actually want in life, instead of jails, institutions, death, car accidents, overdoses, robberies, gunfights, you name it, all that stuff that comes with active addiction, SWAT team coming and busting your house and closing off your neighborhood. I mean, all that stuff. And I'm speaking from experience. I've experienced all that stupid stuff, all because there was a root that had deeply planted itself in my life, in my subconscious mind, that I was unaware of, and I was just acting on autopilot for almost 2 decades. And so I'm telling you, from experience, you have first got to separate yourself from the drug, okay? Whether that means jail, rehab, having someone lock you in a room where you cannot, I don't know, but rehab is probably going to be your best bet, okay? Honestly, I think that is. And you're going to want to say no. You're going to want to say, F you, man. That's not what I'm doing. I can't do that. Well, okay. If you don't, then what's your plan? If you don't do that, if you don't distance yourself, man, I'm going to make some people mad, right? But I first must agitate you before I can help you. Think of any time you have really gotten some good help. That person first agitated you because it challenged what you thought and what you believed. And sometimes we think a lot more of ourselves than we really should. Like we're something very special and unique. And we are in a sense, but in a sense, we're all the same. Our nature is all the same. It's just our behavior that varies vastly. So distance yourself from the drug for a period of time so that you can start to clean out look, everything in this universe is energy. And I probably lost some of you already. But for those of you who are still paying attention, pay very close attention. Everything is frequency, vibration, okay? Including you, the screen you're looking at, the drugs that we've put in our bodies, they all have a frequency, a vibration. So when you take that frequency of this drug, you take substance A, you put it in you consume it however you put it in you, you fuse with that frequency and you become that frequency and you are locked in on that. You cannot be anything else but that. This is part of how you feel when you get high. The drugs produce a frequency change in your body, and there's a lot more science and neuroscience to it. But if you view it this way, in terms of frequency and energy, it makes a lot of sense. So I put a drug in me. I become the frequency of it. I match it, and it's a low frequency. And so everything on that plane of existence is what is going to come into my life. I'm going to reverberate it out, and it's going to come back. And this is how everything works. How do you think AM, FM radios work? It is a wave of frequency that is sent out and received. And that's exactly what we are doing with our brains and our minds. We are sending and receiving thought patterns and frequencies, okay? This is really how it works. And I encourage you to look deeper into this. I study this stuff like my life depends on it, because it does. And it also depends for me to be able to help others. If I can help some people understand this stuff and what you truly are. See, that's the thing. I didn't really understand what I was or who I truly was. And once you start to understand what a powerful, creative, awesome, and fearsome being that you really, really, truly are, you realize you're limitless. And whatever you have a passion for, you can actually set out and achieve. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I have had some good training. I have definitely done my fair share of suffering, self-induced. No man or woman could ever hurt me as badly as I have hurt myself. And once you realize that, and once you've hit the bottom so hard that you smack the skull off the inside of your head, your brain off the inside of your skull from hitting rock bottom so hard, you learn that, like, man, like, life is not that bad or hard. I mean, I got through all that. Nothing could ever be that bad for me again. I mean, my dad dying, my brother dying, divorce, homelessness. I was homeless with almost 5 years sober. Nothing was ever nearly as bad as it was in my active addiction when I experienced complete spiritual death twice. And if you ever have really, truly experienced a complete, total spiritual death, man, I pray for you, and I'm so happy if you've gotten through that, because that is the hardest thing a person can possibly experience. When you're just literally a shell of a person, the wind blows and you crumble into dust, right? That's the level I was at. And I know some of you listening are either there or have been there. If you've gotten through it, man, I applaud you, because it's not easy. I get it. But once you have that low, I mean, there is no low beyond that, in my opinion. Maybe some disagree. That's okay. But in my personal opinion, once you get through that, man, like life is fine. I mean, nothing's that bad. Anything that happens is never that bad again. It just isn't. What could possibly be that bad? I mean, the death of and some people might be like, well, you're crazy. You're not right for thinking that. Like, my child dies and that's not as bad. Well, maybe not, honestly. And I don't have kids, but I've had friends that were like brothers to me. I've had parents. I've had a wife that I'm divorced from when I was 22, 24, something like that. None of it hurt as bad. It hurt bad, but not as bad as active addiction. And that's what I'm saying. So once you get through that, man, you're unstoppable. You're like invincible. You're a whole nother monster. You're unleashed. And Jordan Peterson says this thing, and shout out to Jordan Peterson. Become a monster and then learn how to control it. And that is what makes a good man. At least one of the big attributes is you can be dangerous, but you choose not to be. Okay. So learn how to control that. And now that you can literally arrest that demon that lives inside of you and lock it in a tiny little cage that your day-to-day life, you don't even think about it anymore. It's still there. It's still there. But it is so gray and faded that it has no control or hold over your beautiful Technicolor life. And this is coming from a guy who has been there, who has done it, who has seen it, who has experienced it. I've had near-death experiences. I've had demonic attacks. I have actually literally, a demon has tried to possess me. And I firmly believe my mother is a very spiritual woman, a Christian. She believes in Jehovah God. She believes in Jesus' sacrifice. And I was in her house once. Okay. Listen to this story. It's interesting. And maybe you've heard things like this, or maybe it's happened to you, but I was actually a couple days away from going into treatment the last time I went. Okay. And, I was staying in her office on a blow up mattress, like 4 inches off the floor, a little blow up mattress, single mattress. And she had went to bed, and her room was around the corner, and I had the door open. All the doors in the rooms were open, and I'm laying on my right side, and I hear my mom whisper my name. Like, I'm laying down trying to go to bed. She's like, Raymond. And I'm like, what, Mom? I'm like, man, I just laid down. My mom's known for doing this, like calling you, and then she won't answer. She wants you to come to her, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, what, Mom? Nothing. And I was like, oh, well, if she really wants me, she'll call me. So a few seconds later, Raymond. And this is my mother's voice. Like, it's my mom. And I said, what, Mom? Nothing. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. If she really needs me. And then I hear it again. Raymond. And I'm like, ugh, for goodness sake. So I pull the covers off. I get up. I walk into my mom's room. Like, what? And I can hear her snoring, like, real lightly. Like, she's sound asleep. All the hair on my body stood up. I'm like, okay, I am just going to not react to this. I'm going to pretend Nothing's wrong. I'm going to go back and lay down and go to bed. I'm just ignoring anything else I hear. So I'm laying there, not even 5 minutes maybe, and it's dark. It's nighttime, right? And so in the corner of the room, as I'm laying on my right side, the one corner of the room, it's dark in the corner, and I see this figure start to come up the corner and onto the ceiling, that like a shadow, a dark shadow, and it had eyes, and it was a nanosecond. This thing jumped, just flew right into the left side of my ribs, and I was screaming bloody murder. And it woke my mom up. She came in, and I was paralyzed. I was just screaming. This thing tried to possess me, legitimately. I crap you not. It was trying to possess me. I truly believe 100% that I've always believed in God, always. I've never struggled with that, ever, fortunately. Now I've grown away from God at times in my life. I've turned my back on God, but he was always there for me. My mother has always been a very devout Christian woman. Not like the super strict, weird kind, but she's a very spiritual woman, right? And she's very strong in her faith. And I've always admired that. And her house has a lightness about it. It's light in there. It's bright. It's airy. It feels good. The energy's good in there. And I truly believe that because of my belief and maybe the environment and my mother's belief that this thing, but I always I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe that he is the Savior and that his sacrifice for our sins is true. I firmly, and I've, even in my worst, darkest days, I've always held on to that. I've always believed that. Okay. And I truly believe that I was covered by the blood of Jesus, and that this thing could not possess me. I mean, and this is just one example. I have literally had demonic attacks for years, every night when I was in my darkest days, literally. I mean, I had demons wake me up, rip me out of my bed by my neck, and physically harm me. Like I'm looking at another person, only it's a demon, right? And they're squeezing the life out of me off the ground. Like I've had a lot of, and I mean, believe it or not, man, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just telling you my experiences, and this stuff is real. And if you believe in dark and demonic, you got to believe in the light. You know, you can't just pick and choose. I mean, that would be foolish. So anyway, I firmly believe that believing in God, whether you think he hates you or you don't believe in him, it's just a lie. It's just a lie, I assure you. God does not hate you. He is very real. Everything around us points to a creator. Someone had to create this microphone and this camera and the screen and the phone and the computer that you're watching on right now, right? Some intelligent mind. So look around at creation. And if you tell me that happened by accident, man, I'm sorry. I'm not on board with that. I don't believe it for a second. It doesn't even make any sense. It's so outlandish and ridiculous to me that it just happened with a bang, like by accident, by chance. DNA came into existence. Man, anyway, that's a whole nother episode and conversation. But look, man, God loves you. He is there. We've got to call on him. We've got to show him that we want a relationship with him. And I'm not talking about religion. Please don't get this twisted. I'm not talking about traditions and practices. I'm talking about a real relationship with the true God of existence, the God that is infinite, that there is no beginning and no end. And if you really think about it, if there ever was a time, now listen closely, if there ever was a time where nothing existed, then nothing would exist now. So therefore, something must be eternal. Think about that. Let that sink in, and you'll see how true that is. So what is that eternal thing? I'll leave that for you to answer, but I know what it is, who it is for me. I don't know about you guys that have maybe had some big struggles like this in your life with addiction, but I know my own human flesh and blood and bone was not powerful enough to get through it. There's no way I could have survived the things that I've been through without some help from the unseen realm, the spirit realm, from forces unknown to me, that I cannot see. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean there isn't something there. I'll tell you that because I have really had direct spiritual warfare with the demonic realm. When we put drugs in us, and again, we match that frequency, it's like a beacon of light or a beacon of darkness and that you literally are illuminated to them, and they see you and they come fleeing towards you. And once one latches onto you or in your environment, it says, hey guys, come over here. We got one. And 7 more come, and they just torment you and they don't leave you alone. And you're still putting this drug in you, and you are severing the connection to spirit and opening yourself like a portal to darkness. And anyone that has been through addiction for a period of time, you know this is true. If you don't believe this, you're believing a lie, okay? You just are. I'm telling you the truth. I would not come on here and tell these things and them be untrue. So I don't know. I hope that helps. And I hope that you are safe. If you are struggling or know someone that is struggling, I hope that you find it in yourself to reach out and get some help, to ask for some help. And if you are a family member of someone who is an addict, you got to protect yourself. There's got to be a point where you detach from the situation for your own health, wellness, safety, well-being. I know we want to help, but sometimes we enable, and that's not helping. So sometimes people have to learn the hard way. I know I did. But when I reflect back, any lesson in life that I've learned that has been worth something to me, I have learned the absolute hardest way I could possibly learn it. And those were the best lessons. Those were the ones that stuck and who shaped me into the person I am today. And I'm just fortunate enough to be able to have survived all this, to tell you about it, and to share my experience, strength, and hope with you. And again, it was just a training for me to do this. This is the purpose. This is why. And that's how I make sense out of it all. And that's how I add meaning to it. And that's how I help other people make sense and add meaning to their lives and for them to find their own purpose. And not every addict may be a person that needs to go out there and spread the message of recovery. I mean, you should to some degree, especially if somebody helped you. It's only, I mean, you get what you give, reap what you sow. And so you should at least try to help somebody. But maybe your thing that you do with your life is nothing to do with that. Maybe you've recovered and you've moved on and now you own a juice bar, I don't know, whatever you do. Maybe you like to sell cars. Maybe you're in sales in some form, multi-level marketing. Maybe you're a content creator. Maybe your purpose in life is to be the best chef. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, it's usually right underneath our nose. But for me, my purpose and calling is to do this and to help people. And so if you're looking for a community that you can join, Ray's Recovery is an up-and-coming global addiction support community that I have started. It's in the process as we speak, February 18th, 2023, the time of this recording. And so if you're looking for a place you can go, I'm also going to have a separate kind of group in Ray's Recovery for the families and people, loved ones of addicts as well, because they need help just like the addict. It affects everybody. So I'm going to have 2 different groups, one for addicts, people that are going through it or have been through it, and one for the families as well, because we need to support them too, man. I mean, we put them through living nightmare. We really, I mean, I know I did. I put my parents through hell, and I'm surprised that my mom still loves me. My dad's passed, but and he always loved me, but I'm surprised they did. You know, after everything I put them through. I mean, you parents got some strong love in you, and I admire that. And so, Raise Recovery. RAISE, raising up the idea of recovery, expanding people's awareness and consciousness on recovery, giving them tools and resources to support them. I run a fundraiser for this. If you'd like to donate, the link will be in the description of this video. The donations go to supporting the still sick and suffering addict, growing the community, some items to help for the people in the community, and also to help pay for the time of people who are helping to build this community, mainly me. And so that will all be on the form. When you click, it's explained. We accept debit and credit card transactions, donations, and cryptocurrency, stable coins only, USDC, USDT, BUSD, any stable coin. And all that information is in the form when you go to fill it out. There is a place for notes in there. Please read the disclaimer. I am not a nonprofit. I do own a digital marketing agency, so I do get a major advantage there when marketing for costs. So for marketing this group, I'm running it through my digital agency, my digital marketing agency. So having said that, again, it's not a nonprofit. I'm not a nonprofit organization. In order to qualify for a tax deduction on a donation, as of date, it must be $13,000 for a single person and $27,000 donation for a married couple before you can write it off on your taxes as a charitable donation anyway. And that is coming straight from my financial advisor. So I did not look that up on my own. That is coming from my financial advisor, whom I trust and many other people trust with their finances, and has been a very straightforward and honest man. So that's where I'm getting that information from. So yeah, small donations probably aren't going to be tax writable as a tax write-off anyway. But yeah, that's the disclaimer. So you can print the form after you're done filling it out. It's not a tax receipt though. It's not. It's just for your own records and to say that you did it. And how the percentage of things, how the money is split up and where it goes is in there. It's all spelled out. If anyone has any questions, you can go to the form. You can contact me. There's an email and there's a direct WhatsApp for my business. You can send me a message. Okay, I'm going to see it. If you email the address in the form, raylivingthelegacy@gmail.com, or click on the WhatsApp button for Prestige Digital Marketing, LLC. It's a limited liability company. I'm being fully transparent here. You can get a hold of me and I will actually respond to you. You can leave a comment in this video and I will actually respond to you as long as I see it. And yeah, if you need some help or some guidance or someone to talk to who gets it, that's what I do. And I'm here to help. So I appreciate you guys tuning in today. I really hope that you got something good and valuable out of this. And there's going to be a lot more content. There is a whole lot of topics that we can talk about for addiction recovery, for the addict and the families, how to see your way through this, how to survive it, what to do after, how to rebuild your life, etc., 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 etc. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you, and I will see you on the next one.